This summer, Wisden are proudly sponsored by Kia UK. Kia are leading the way in electrification with their groundbreaking range of EVs, including the EV9, EV6, and the UK Car of the Year, the EV3. Kia also have a commitment to movement that inspires and want to help cricket fans get closer to the action. Listen every week for Kia's Movement That Inspires moment for chances to win exciting experiences at the Kia Oval this summer. Hello and welcome to the Wisden Cricket Weekly podcast. A big week for the podcast as Liam Dawson makes his long-awaited England Test return. We'll be talking overrates again after England would dock 2 points in the WTC for maintaining slow overrates during the Lord's Test. And we'll talk Australia-West Indies after the Windies were bowled out for just 27 in Jamaica the other night. I'm Yaz Rana, and with me today are Phil Walker and Ben Gardner, and you'll see in front of us a freshly poured pint of Stella, poured using the Perfect Draft Ultimate Beer Machine that's right behind us. We are, of course, today toasting the call-up of Liam Dawson. For newer pod listeners, Dawson has been somewhat of a cause célèbre for the podcast for a while. Butch was adamant that he should have been playing in the 2023 Ashes, and I was thinking about it today. The first question I ever asked in a press conference was when England announced their preliminary squad for the 2019 World Cup, in which they did not include Liam Dawson. They included Joe Denley as the backup spinner. And my question to Ed Smith at the time was basically, where's Liam Dawson?
2 years later, you get your answer.
Yeah.
He's there. He's ready.
He's there. Phil, what should we expect from Liam Dawson? He's 35. He's not played a test match since 2017.
I just hope he lands it on the cut strip. I mean, the pressure has suddenly flipped on us now, hasn't it? Right? You and Butcher in particular. My word, you're
already distancing yourself.
No. I'm merely just shouting from the galleries. You and Butch, you're the real kingmakers on this show. But look, I was talking to someone a couple of days ago, actually at Lord's. We were watching day 5 together by chance, and he's a good county player, and we were talking about spin bowlers around, and he said, "Oh yeah, Dawson's the toughest one to face," and he said, and closely followed by Jack Leach. He said they're very similar what they do, and I said, "What do they do?" And he said they get turn at pace, by which he means he can drive it into the pitch at a pace that makes it difficult to come down and smother, and he still gets turn and purchase. And he was saying that as a point of difference with other spinners who are sniffing around the England side and who are in the England side. And he was saying that Dawson is the toughest that he faces. And this cricket was part of a conversation with some other players around the grounds, and a few had for Leach and a few had for Dawson, but they both offer something similar. He's not as tall as Leach, and so the trajectory is slightly different. But he bowls in his sleep in white ball cricket, and so the accuracy, you would take that for granted. Is he going to run through a team? Is he renowned as a fourth innings match winner for Hampshire? Not especially, but he will always have an effect. And then, of course, he can bat as well.
I think that's it. He averages 26 in the championship since the start of 2022. But he averaged 44.4, having scored nearly 3,000 runs at that time too. I think that's significant. And the other thing, why I've always really liked him as a test prospect, is that compare him to Leach. And I think in the championship, pretty similar spinners. And if you look at it by raw numbers, it's probably Leach who's just ahead. But it's that Dawson plays a lot of high-level white ball cricket and holds his own when batters really come at him, which is something you don't get that much in the championship, but you do get in test cricket.
If they're possibly wondering if Chris Woakes can get through a 4th consecutive test match, then the fact that Dawson can bat really does help alleviate that issue down in the lower order. And should he and Woakes play, then it becomes a extraordinarily strong tail, really. You could have perhaps Cast at number 11. And so it's an interesting move. It's perhaps slightly counterintuitive to say it's a progressive move. When you bring in someone in their mid-30s, was he 35?
Yeah.
And yet it feels progressive, and it feels far-reaching because he now becomes a very serious consideration for that Australia tour when you need all the help that you can get and you need all the lower order batting, crucially, that you can call upon. He also, in my experience, makes tough runs. He makes runs when Hampshire need him to. I go back to that 100 he made at Chelmsford to win an extraordinary game down there when all teams were pushing hard and Essex were driving home on that final day, trying to get it done, knowing that they could still pip Surrey to the championship, and he peeled off an extraordinary runnable 100. I was there for that. I just think he's a substantial cricketer, and that's what England are looking for. They're looking for multifaceted cricketers, and he is one. I was mildly surprised that they called him up ahead of Leach, but I think it's a good move. Of course I do.
Just especially this season on Leach, because actually, talking about the numbers, they would have been very similar the last 2 years, but this season is actually when that difference, you can see it. Dawson averaging a touch over 40 this season. Leach, the best spin in the country by numbers is, I think, fourth for any bowler in Division 1 of the County Championship, averaging 26, whereas, Dawson quite a bit higher. So I guess...
But you have to contextualise that, right?
Obviously, yeah. So, but it's just interesting to try and think about what has changed with Dawson. I guess, it's just maybe the direction of travel has been slowly moving, obviously come back in white ball cricket. Rob Key talking about before the start of the season, I guess they just had a chat and being like, well, let's be grown-ups, you can do a job for us now. And on the tough runs thing, just think back to his test debut as well, when he makes that 70-odd at the end of that tough series in India, 2016-17. It's not an easy time to make your debut, and to get in and just get your head down, make a score is good. So I'm very happy for him.
I don't think it's I'm not saying that you are saying this, Ben, but I don't think there will have been a drop-off in his quality. If his average is up across 8 or 9 championship games this year compared to his career average, or indeed compared to what it was last year when he was irresistible, I don't think that is because there will be a diminishment in his game. There can be any number of factors for that, not least the fact that it's been very hard to winkle wickets out on these pitches in this unusually sort of placid summer for bowlers. So I wouldn't see into that too much. I hope that he feels completely accepted in the fold, because it must have been hard for him over the last few years to see other players jump ahead of him, and him carrying a lot of drinks in the past as well. And it didn't end great, his run as an England reserve. I think he probably got a bit fed up with it, understandably so. So I just hope that when he does turn up next week, he feels not like a stopgap, but as a legitimate part of the setup, because for the next 12 months, I think he should be.
Ben, is this another sign that England are a bit more hard-nosed and a bit more pragmatic now? If you look at the side that's likely to play at Old Trafford, Jamie Smith, the youngest player at 25, those sensational Baz ball picks from the last 2 years, unless Bethel comes in for Pope, none of them are actually going to be there.
Yeah, and even I think, although Leach was never a Baz ball pick, he was in the inner sanctum for a while and would have been an easier guy to go back to from that sense. So to go to just being like, well, we need the best cricketer for right now, and to judge that as Dawson rather than, obviously this isn't the time for a project player like Rian Ahmed or Farhan Ahmed, or to try and turn Jacob Bethel into a test spinner. That's not the time for this. But even that it's Dawson over Leach is hard nosed, and it's just interesting looking down the demographics of that side in terms of the ages. Given obviously all the punts they have made, some obviously have actually not been failures. Like Rian Ahmed, obviously he's worked out as a punt when he's played. But now that we get to this stage, and there's no Josh Hull to be seen, Bethel around the squad, but not in the 11. This does feel like, and also this can, you sometimes get teams in certain sweet spots, don't you, when they sort of are all sort of, they might not craft these sort of totemic careers where they're making 10,000 test runs or whatever, but they're all kind of an age of a peak at the same time. I just think back to the 2019 England World Cup side, where they're all sort of within a 4-year period. You've got a similar-ish thing happening here over a bit of a wider spread, but there's no one who's noticeably tailing off and no one who's sort of still finding their way. It is everyone who should be knowing what they're doing and still good enough to do it, I think.
Yeah, I got that sense at Lords, actually. And clearly there are 1 or 2 players who are out of form and may yet not feature in the next few games or whatever. But looking at the balance of the team, the combination of emergent players in their prime and experience, I agree. I think that the balance of this team by accident or design is pretty good. the one caveat to that is that Wokes is your so-called attack leader because he's the most experienced and whatnot. But he's not going on that plane. He's not going to Australia. So it feels like a lovely balance at the moment of experience and youth. But come Australia, it will feel like a raw and unproven attack. And yet, as we always like to say with fast bowling, the progression is different with fast bowling. As we see, Jofra Archibald, 18 overs in 4 years with the red ball and comes back and he's your best bowler. Bryden Cast looks like he's a test match bowler, even though he's only played 3 games at home. So it happens differently and quicker with the quicks. And yet they will be turning up in Australia lacking that old hand. And if you were being really greedy, you'd have loved one of Anderson or Broad just to be 2 or 3 years younger.
Or even Wokes just to be a couple of years younger.
Or even Wokes, yeah, who's probably half a yard slower than he was. But also Wokes has said himself, me and the Kookaburra, we just don't get on. And he just doesn't want to go near it.
I was talking to a friend in the podcast, Tim Wigmore, and he says Chris Wokes delivered one of the great interview lines where talking about whether or not he should tour in India and Australia. He said, well, my record speaks for itself, but the wrong way around. No one ever says that about them when they shouldn't be selected.
He said it to me actually after the Ashes 2023, obviously when he was man of the series for England. And I said, so shot in the arm for you. He says, nah. No, I'm going to get through these white ball games and then take it from there, but I don't want to go abroad. And he's not having it.
I just want you to save the accents for the SD section of the podcast.
If you fancy sipping on pub quality draft beers whilst watching the India series at home, you can with Perfect Draft, the ultimate home beer machine. With the hot weather, it's the perfect setup to have. You can even have your keg chilled ahead of the game or for an after-work beer. Just use a cooler scheduler in their app and set it to the perfect temperature on the go. The beer is fresh and there are loads of different beers to choose from. It's as if you're drinking down the pub, but from the comfort of your own home. We have our own Perfect Draft machine here in our studio, and Stella poured chilled to the optimum temperature of 3 degrees ahead of this early Wednesday morning recording. Thank you to Perfect Draft, who have given you, the listeners, an exclusive 20 quid off machines with the code Wisden20, so you can pour pints like a pro at home in no time. More than 40 different brands to choose from, all chilled to the perfect temperature for 30 days. It's the perfect company to a packed summer of cricket. Hurry, this code is valid only for the first 200 users. Australia have beaten West Indies 3-0 in the Caribbean, and they've done it in some style, defending 204 in the final innings in Jamaica. They bowled West Indies out for 27, the second lowest test score in the game's history. Mitchell Starc took a triple wicket maiden in the first over the innings, and then he was outdone later by Scott Boland, who backed him up with a hat-trick. Starc finished with figures of 6 for 9. Ben, there's been a lot of, I would say, hopeful chat in the English media. Discussions around the makeup of the Australian top 3 with smiles on faces whilst the discussion's being had. Who's going to open? Who's going to bat 3? But bloody hell, the bowlers look good. If you look at the latest ICC test rankings that were updated this morning, 5 of the top 10 bowlers in the world are Australian.
Yeah, I mean, they're extraordinary. And I think the thing for me with this score is so I had my phone off that evening after the test match had gone on and finished here. I was like, I'm going to take an evening off, not look at the cricket. But when I looked the next morning, I wasn't surprised that much at the score. Like in my head, I was like, I think it's probably a 60 all outer kind of thing. Like when they've got that pink ball, they know what they're doing. And they've picked the 4 quicks because they've looked at the conditions, left line out for the first time in 12 years. Yeah, since they picked Ashton Agar here. And it's not just that they're 4 brilliant bowlers. They're 4 bowlers who complement each other so beautifully. You obviously got Hazelwood with the skills with the new ball, sort of that building the pressure sort of at the top of off, and you've got Starc, who's just can be so ultra aggressive, but has also added more to his arsenal as well. But you've got then the left arm, right arm thing. Cummins, who as a first change bowler, is the kind of first change bowler you'd build in a lab, basically.
Wasn't even used.
Yeah.
Wasn't even used. 27 all out, exactly. And Cummins, maybe Australia's greatest modern seamer, not used.
Yeah, and then Scott Boland, who when he gets in the park kind of outdoes all of them, is the only guy in history who's got a better bowling average is SF Barnes back from over 100 years ago. And likely one of them will, probably Scott Boland won't be on the field for that first test. There was some suggestion that maybe a 4-prong seam attack we might see again during the Ashes. There is a pink ball test in that. But yeah, they are brilliant. And then actually, even on the Aussie top order, I've become, obviously they've got two big question marks at the very top. Lower down, I think they will be actually reasonably content with how the series has gone. You know, there's been no big scores there. There's loads of stats about the series, but my favourite I found just before we started recording was that this is the first series since 1888, first 3-match series in which no batter has reached 80 in an innings. So you can pretty much double the batting averages and get to what is actually what they've done. And given that, Head has played well quite a few times. So has Carey. Green played a really good innings on the second day of the pink ball test and then was out first ball the next morning. But still, they'll view that Green number 3 thing as something they'll have a bit more confidence in. Those two openers, I think, there is that anyone could come from anywhere in the Shield, or it could be Khawaja and Labuschagne. But that's really now the question. And actually, from further down, you'd say that Head's looking good, Carey's looking good, Smith is still Steve Smith. Bo Webster is going to make some annoying runs in the Ashes, and that bowling attack is, one of the best there's been in Test history, and now has, a complete performance that will sit in the record books for a very, very long time.
Phil, there's an extraordinary press release issued by Cricket West Indies last night where they said that they are going to conduct an emergency review meeting into the series, into the performance of 27 all out, etc. And in that press release, they said that they're going to call up Clive Lloyd, Viv Richards and Brian Lara just for a chat, see how things are.
BCL was probably in the nets last week anyway, so...
From a West Indies perspective, a bizarre series, because actually on the one hand you saw that their bowling attack's amazing, but on the other hand their batting, and not if you follow the Caribbean cricket guys, podcast guys on Twitter, or you watch their stuff on YouTube, they've been quite big on how their batting has been terrible for actually quite a long time now, and this sort of level for a while. And they had a tour with Pakistan early in the year where they were on average 30 for 6 basically every test match and were bailed out by the bowlers. This has sort of been coming.
It has. It's been real agony to watch. This is no shade whatsoever on Australia, but the West Indies have had their opportunities in these 3 games, and if they'd just won one of them to go down 2-1, then you'd have felt like that would have been a pretty positive result, considering that they're getting some emerging quicks coming through who are fabulous. Roston Chase is a really smart, articulate bloke who cares deeply about the job, and you can sense that. But when they give him that job, a player who hadn't really played Test cricket in a while and who had never been a particularly effective Test cricketer, then already you start to wonder what that side is going to look like and how rudderless it's going to be when things start to go wrong. And the team that they picked for the 3rd Test match bore very little, the top 6 bore very little resemblance to the team that they picked for the first. Brathwaite, who's been on a horror run and probably his time had come, they dropped him, which I could understand because he looked shotless and done in after the 2nd test. But they shifted the order around again. Openers were batting at 4, vice versa. And they dropped a player in Kesey Carty, who I quite like, who averages 50 in ODI cricket and is 28 years old and made a couple of gritty 20s in the first Test match at number 3, got an absolute brute inevitably from Cummins in that first Test match to nick off, and they got rid of him. I couldn't really fathom that. So the sense that they are making it up from one week to the next in this uneven Test team is hard to shake. All I would add is that from what I gather, the structure, the infrastructural system behind it all is in a less parlous state than it used to be, and that there is now a central academy that has buy-in from all the different regions, and that there is a more centralized selection process and talent identification program. And I spoke at length to Jimmy Adams about this, who said that his significant legacy to West Indies cricket is that he was the man who helped oversee that as the academy director effectively. Now, this was a few years. Now, that was in response to years and years of decline, as we know. But decline combined with complacency, an assumption that talent will always out in the end. And as the game becomes more and more ultra professionalized, you see that wing and a prayer just doesn't apply anymore. It can't apply anymore. And so there is an attempt within the structure of West Indies cricket to get sharper on talent ID, holding on to your players as well and bringing them through. But it's very, very hard to produce test-hardened batters when you play 5 or 6 first-class games a year in about a 6-week period, often on pretty shoddy tracks that favour the quicks, and you're asking players to get battle ready for when an all-time great bowling attack turn up on pitches which are, as seems to be characteristic now, tough to bat on. It's a no chance,
play that
right?
much cricket.
It's a no chance. Exactly.
When they came here in 2024, looking at, was it McCall Louis, who looked really good, but you actually looked at his first class record, he'd barely played. And they go through these enormous gaps in the schedule where they're not playing any cricket.
Yeah. And 30, an average 30 now, you're a test cap immediately. And I remember talking to Lara about this last year. And he was saying when he was a player, you had to average 50 in Red Stripe Cup cricket, their 3-day or 4-day stuff as it was when he was coming through. And if you didn't, you were nobody. And now if you average 30, you're in. Now that can't just be a fall off in technique and in preparation. That has to be something to do with a first-class system that's fundamentally not fit for purpose as well. So this is not a problem that can be just overturned overnight with a better structure. It has to go right root and branch. You have to have buy-in regarding the quality of the pitches. You have to have buy-in regarding the primacy of their first-class competition. And in fairness, they do say you can't be considered to be a test player unless you play a certain number of games in red ball cricket. I wonder as well if we are being serious about trying to revitalise this great cricketing region, then can other countries have a role to play, perhaps?
I've always thought, as an idea, you would need buy-in from lots of different boards, but get them here.
Get them here.
Get young West Indians who are really good, who are playing on the A circuit. Get them in as a third overseas. It would increase the standard of county cricket. It would increase the standard of international cricket. Be a better spectacle. You get more people interested from overseas. We know how well streams have done over the last few years. If you had one extra spot for uncapped overseas players, I would be quite interested in that. I don't think there'd be real value in it for everyone involved.
Yeah, massively. In a previous generation, you would have players coming through, young players from the West Indies or Christchurch or wherever, from Brisbane, to come over to England to fine-tune their games. Now, that used to be seen as a virtue, something that would deepen and replenish the county game as well by making it more watchable. We should have a better open doors policy with regards to this. We now have the space for 2 overseas, which is a positive thing in county cricket, but I would relax that even more. We have plenty of space for English-reared professionals here, 450 places available. I would have no issue at all with a more consciously outward-thinking approach to talent development, because ultimately the counties are in the service of the English game. The English game is in the service of the international game. And as we know, and as we drone on about every single week, without that kind of that colour and that depth across the world game, then we don't have much of a game to speak of. So it's ultimately beneficial to all of us. And from a watching point of view, you imagine watching a sort of 21-year-old stroke maker. You imagine watching Jewel Andrew bat for Gloucestershire next year as a third overseas player. Now, is that really so detrimental to the English game and to the chances of developing young English talent? No, it's not. Is it beneficial to the West Indies game? Absolutely it is.
No, I completely agree. I've thought this for a very long time. Close to home, Ben, England have been docked 2 WTC points for maintaining slow over rates during the Lord's Test match. What do you think of that? India haven't been docked any points and they were similarly slow. And as we discussed on Monday's podcast, it's not as if it's just the teams who are at fault. A lot of the slow play is also due to umpires not really moving things on quickly enough. Then there's also, when you look at the press release that tells us this news, there's a lack of transparency as to why it's been done.
Yeah, that's true. And I haven't sat there with a stopwatch, and I doubt anyone who's commenting on this.
Anyone were to,
it would be me. Yeah, that's true.
You should do it for next test match.
Yeah, I'll give it a go. But I guess a couple of misconceptions, First of all, there are lots of allowances built into the overrate regulations for drinks break, reviews, etc. Secondly, they will take into account, say, Shubman Gill having a massage on the outfield and not count that against England. That's not why England have been docked these points. I imagine they will have just gone through it and been like, when you look at all that stuff that's gone on in the field of play, that India were just above that threshold when you take everything into account, and England were just below it, which is what 2 overs is. It is just below it. But you're still right that, and I think as well is that this isn't working. Obviously, that's the thing, is that we have the system of punishments in place, and teams don't care. It doesn't do anything to speed up the passage of play, and it makes a mockery of the tournament that we want to revive, to help revive the Test game, to keep interest in it sort of ticking upwards. So that just shows you the system isn't working. And the reason why it's not working, and we were talking about the fact that it does work in the County Championship, is that while the World Test Championship is, a growing prize for teams, it's still not the main prize. England would rather win this series against India than they would win the World Test Championship. So if they think that, the way to go about winning this game is to, tick around the field a bit, or if they're just not too bothered about it, then they're not going to try and up their game. So what you have to have is some sort of in-game penalty. That's the only way to solve it, because it's an in-game crime, and that's what teams have cared about most for. And you see this most ridiculously in the World Test Championship final. I think back to 2023, which was you lost, I think, more than the session across the first 4 days of play, and you weren't far off that here, but still you lost that then, and then both teams were fined afterwards. But obviously couldn't be docked points because they were in the final, and that shows you how silly the system is. But if you have something like you work out your over rates at the end of each day, and then you docked 5 runs for each over you are short, or something where you have a ticking rate that goes along for per session, and if you're below it, then you lose a fielder. One of those 2 things perhaps, but it's got to be an in-game punishment that will have an effect on a team in a game if you want to increase the passage of play. And in the past, I've been less sort of bothered about over rates than others, because I don't like the entertainment thing. The value for money thing, I think, is a red herring. I think it's the entertainment when the game is actually going on. If you're sitting there and it's slow to watch, that's the issue. It's not that someone sits in the game and goes, "Oh, I've only got 86 overs rather than the 90 overs promised. I'm not going to come back." It's that you actually need to be like, if a game is slow because there's kind of loads happening, and there are those understandable allowances, or there's an injury break and that kind of thing, that can actually be part of the live experience kind of thing. If the game is slow just because you get to the end of a drinks break and then the umpires realize, oh wait, we need to do a ball change, oh wait, none of these balls fit through the hoop, that's the issue. It's if it's bad to watch in the moment rather than the overall.
And I think
value.
it was this test match.
Exactly.
It was really slow. It deterred from the watching experience. I think it's simple. Just force them to bowl the overs. You have to bowl 90 overs a day. They will bowl them quicker. Simple as that. No one wants to go home at 7:30, which is the which is the time they would.
It's screamingly obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, and you wouldn't have to have these punishments that devalue competition.
You can start. I mean, how sort of decorous is it and Victorian that we start at 11 anyway? Start at 10:30 for Christ's sake. Or you bowl your 30 and then you have lunch, and whenever that happens, lunch on 30, tea on 60, go home at 90.
They will bowl them so much quicker.
They will bowl them faster. For sure.
They don't run around between overs anywhere nearly as quickly as they do in the Championship when they feel like they have to.
Yeah. There's been a lot of shit thrown at the umpires in the last week. And I have sympathy for them because I think it's part of a broader erosion of authority that they've had to suck up. And I think there's been a shift in the culture around relationships between umpires and players. I think DRS will have exacerbated that problem. And I feel like umpires now are essentially denuded of any sense of their own authority. And as players become ever more powerful, ever more central, ever more rich, ever more holding the cards with regards to their participation in international cricket even, I think it becomes ever harder for these ICC umpires to look the players in the eye and say, this is not on. You don't need another drink after 20 minutes. You don't need another change of gloves after 15. You don't need this. This is not on. And if you are going to do it, then you can clear off. You can get off the pitch, and we'll get someone else in, and you can resume your innings when there's another wicket. None of them will have that kind of power anymore, and none of them will even have, it seems to me, the conversational authority to at least begin that debate. What I really, and I was saying this on Monday night, so forgive me if I'm repeating things, but I really struggled to watch the optics of Lords. And this, obviously it's not just Lords, blimey, but the optics I found uncomfortable because it looked like there was a kind of sneering indifference, not disdain, but indifference towards the umpires from the on-field players, as if they have no power to police the game anymore. And I don't like that at all. I don't like to see that. And I don't like players taking advantage of that shift in power towards them. But I don't know how you change that around. You know, the cat is so far out the bag.
No, I agree. Ben, one of the talking points around the slowness of over eights was the number of times the ball's being inspected and there's no regulation around that, etc. There's been a lot of opinions over the state of the Duke's ball. Stuart Broad tweeted mid-test match saying this has been a problem for a long time now. This clearly is an issue with the ball. You spoke to the owner of the company that makes the Duke's ball, and you can listen to the full conversation on the Patreon. You can become a Patreon subscriber for £5 a month plus VAT, get all the dailies and additional weekly shows, etc., etc. What did you think, having spoken to him for 35, 40 minutes?
I think the main thing I think is that I wonder if the issue isn't so much. I almost think the Dukes has stayed the same in a world that is changing, basically, and in several ways. So first of all, the idea that you can make these cricket balls completely uniform isn't really the case, basically. He described it as almost like a living thing. You've got this, it's all natural materials that you're going to get sort of variations in, that they control. Sort of they get the leather in, they get the thread in, but it's not like they're controlling the production of that, and that will have its effect. And we saw a big instance of this in 2022 when I think there were issues with the treatment of leather over COVID, basically, where they couldn't get it to the same quality they needed to.
Can I just ask, I haven't listened to this, does he acknowledge then that there has been a falling away in the quality of the materials?
No, not really. Like he thinks that now the materials are fine, but there are going to be differences between balls, and therefore a bit in batches. But it's also
that's always been priced in, though, presumably.
Sure. I guess one of the other issues is
that they're all handmade as well, right?
Yes, yeah, and that's actually the key difference really between Dukes and, say, the Kookaburra, where Kookaburra is machine stitched. A lot of the stitching on a Kookaburra is actually just for decoration, whereas the stitching in a Dukes holds the ball together. And the Dukes, at its best, as it was, say, up until 2018 or so, was, I think, a vital part of making cricket in England so watchable. And then you had the stitching and the pronounced seam would act as like a rudder for seam and swing, and it would give bowlers chance for everything. It would allow batters to do their thing.
So what's going on now then?
So I think one of the things now is that, like, conditions have changed. Like we talk about, the fact that outfields are drier, it's hotter. Like, you think this is leather. So actually the difference between leather in 20 degrees versus like 31 degrees, it's going to just be quite a lot softer. And then batters hit it more and hit it more often. And if you've got a ball that is then a bit softer, it's going to take more of a dent out of it. And then you've also got bowlers who are bowling it faster and actually like a bit less spin bowled at times. I think I think a lot of it is a combination of all those things. But even if it isn't that Dukes have, suddenly declined in quality, that is still an issue. And he would say that, I can make the ball harder, but it'll break bats and break fingers. And I think there's also a cultural thing here, actually, whereas if you think about what an Australian would want from a cricket ball, they would quite like a cricket ball that breaks bats and break fingers. That's what they think cricket is. Whereas in England, we think it's this, this artistry of, getting the ball to go perfectly on the seam and then to swing away. And that's what the Dukes isn't able to do. And, the England team has changed to be a team that is almost less Dukes suitable and to be more Dukes battering. So I think that it might well be that there is some sort of issue in the materials that, even if it's just a minor thing that doesn't become a big scandal, that has led to a slight degradation. But I think a lot of it is actually just conditions are less suitable for Dukes cricket in England now a little bit.
Yeah, I thought my main takeaway from it was the lack of regulation and scrutiny around it is this totally fundamental piece of the overall spectacle. There's barely any scrutiny. I think he was very open about that balls vary in quality from ball to ball for the reasons you outlined. But he also said that he's unable to really assess exactly what's wrong with the balls unless he physically and Dukes have the balls that have been used in front of them to work out what's wrong. And that's not really happened. And I'm like, well, it's been going on for 5 years. How has this not happened?
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is it's a bit like preparing a pitch, right? Is that you'll do all this work into making something ready, but all you're going on before something actually takes place is kind of just looking at it in your own knowledge of it. So you kind of, as much you don't know how a pitch is going to play until you kind of bowl that first ball, or even until both teams have batted on it. Similarly with a ball, you won't know exactly how hard it's going to bounce, how soft it's going to go, how the stitching is going to hold together until you play with it a bit. And obviously you can't test a ball out because you need it to be completely new when you play with it as well. And then each ball's going to be a bit different. So that is an issue as well, is that like testing these things is quite tough. But yeah, I mean, clearly there is an issue there. And maybe it is as simple as Dukes now like make a bit of a tweak as they say that they can do. And, you know, as much as it's true that he says that, you know, I can't know exactly what's wrong with it unless I have it in my hands, they are also watching these games and saying like, is this ball doing what we'd want it to? Is it not? And then trying to reflect on it. So yeah, but then it's interesting as well. I think if it were to be that the game has changed rather than the ball, that's partly why he suggested that maybe look into a new ball after 60 overs, which is obviously is a radical thing.
Was he saying this on this interview?
So when I spoke to him, he said that was a bit blown up in a previous interview he'd done, where that was sort of taken out as a headline. He said like, look, that's something you could look to down the line if you think the ball is going soft too much. And I guess what's also interesting is when we talk about different balls having different qualities, that England on that last day didn't have any issues with the ball. I don't think it was checked once actually. And that is also the other impact. And actually, I think this can also feed into slow play, is that batters and bowlers want conditions to be absolutely perfect for them. Hence why you have batters asking for a drink rather than waiting for a drinks break, or you have Jadeja running for a wee rather than waiting until tea, or you have batters asking for an extra pair of gloves. Similarly with bowlers, I think that there is an element of they want to have the perfect thing, and if they think there's a little bit of an issue with it, that's when they'll be trying to get it changed. And, you know, why wouldn't you seek every edge? But that's why, you know, Root's saying that, like, it's sort of saying the balls are broadly okay. Maybe you limit the number of ball changes you can ask for, and you kind of just get on with it a bit. I think that is a little bit of it as well.
For this episode's Kia's Movement That Inspires moment, Kia, proud sponsors of the Kia Oval, are giving you the chance to attend day one of the England-India Test match this July. Be at the final test of an amazing summer of Test cricket, where England will be looking to either make the series 4-1 or 3-2 in what has been a very exciting series. For your chance to win 4 tickets to day one on July 31st, all you need to do is enter by the link in the description. Celebrating India's tour of England, the podcast is proudly partnered with Remitly. We all cheer for every cover drive, every Yorker, every run saved, but every cheer from the stands or from our screens thousands of miles away is more than just support for the team. Every cheer is a cheer for home. What's the team we play for every single day? That's our family. No matter the distance, they're always with us in every moment of pride, joy, and connection. Maybe that's why millions of people choose Remitly to send money to India. With fast, safe, and affordable transfers, and with great exchange rates with low fees, more of the money you send reaches the people who matter most, because wherever we are, home is in every cheer. Ready to give Remitly a try? Download the Remitly app today and enjoy a special offer on your first transfer. Phil, there is a new magazine out.
Today, I think.
Today, before we go into the whole magazine, there's one feature I want to ask you about first up, and that's the definitive list of the best 40 young players in the world. It's been a while since the magazine has done this. I think 6 years since the last time. How do you go about it? It's a difficult thing.
Well, first of all, I wanted to describe it as the definitively subjective list. But, you know, our Lord and Saviour, Joe Harmon McGowan, said no. Well, Joe oversaw it, but now he lives in the west of Ireland and is hours away from expecting his first child. So he's not here to defend it. He
That suggests that we were going to attack it.
But the thing is, people will, because it's a list, right? And it's the classic pub conversation. So the deal is that you have to be 23 or under, I think at the end of July this year or at the end of August this year or something like that. Anyway, so he scouted around, spoke to dozens of journalists around the country, around the world rather, and he got the steer on the best names. And obviously there was an element of our own assessments, and we dug as deep as we could into the stats and into the origin stories of these players, and whittled it down, I think, from a long list of 70 to 40 in the end. It will never, ever be fully, it will never sit entirely at ease on any of us, because these things shift around. There's an Australian opener, for example, in the list that remains a point of contention between Joe and I, for example. There are... So, yeah, I guess the context is, or the background is that we did this 6 years ago, and we planned to do it every couple of years. But we've only revisited it now, 6 years on. And for a flavour of our accuracy or otherwise... This is what the list was 6 years ago, and okay. I'll give you the top 15. No, I'll give you the top 20, running from 20 down. This was 6 years ago. Okay, Zazai, the Afghan opener, Mehdi Hassan, Bangladesh, good player, Sandeep Labishane, Nepal, Philaqueo, South Africa, Alzari Joseph, West Indies, Jai Richardson, the quick from Australia, Shubman Gill, heard of him? Number 14.
I'm liking the different way you're going through each name depending on how they've gone.
Mujib Rahman, Afghanistani mystery spinner at 13. Shaheen Shah Afridi at 12. Nicholas Pooran at 11. So not bad, really. O'Shane Thomas. Don't know what's happened to him.
I don't know either.
Anyway, he was in there at top 10. Number 10. Imam ul Haq, Pakistan. Shadab Khan, Pakistan. Mustafizur the Fiz Rahman, Bangladesh. Number 7. The only Englishman in this top 20 is Sam Curran at number 6. And then the top 5 is Lungi Ngidi, Shimron Hetmeyer, Prithvi Shaw, Rishabh Pant, and Rashid Khan.
Done pretty well 6 years on. I suppose number 3, Prithvi Shaw, shows how difficult it is
how capricious this thing is. Exactly that. And in Joe's opening notes to the piece, he references that there would have been few that would have argued 6 years ago that Prithvi Shaw wasn't going to be one of India's key men. 3 or 4 years on from that, he's trying to rebuild his career at Wantage Road. So nobody is a sure bet, really. And so it was against that kind of, as I say, precarious, capricious backdrop that we put all this lot together. And without counting up the nationalities until after we'd settled on our 40 and the order of the 40, it threw up some interesting numbers, really. So again, there was Sam Curran 6 years ago as the only Englishman in the top 20. And we have one Englishman in this top 20 as well. So again, the inevitable, come on the YouTubes, come on. You're going to be hard to throw national bias at us for this one with one Englishman in the top 20. 4 Afghans in the top 20, which I think reflects the rawness of their talent pool and how they're given a chance, and they're foregrounded as well.
And they're achieving a lot with a young core. So
immensely. And there's some sparkling players in that top 20 Afghans. 4 of them in there. Only one West Indies batter in the whole of the top 40, which feeds back to what we were saying earlier. 5 Englishmen overall in the 40. There's a 14-year-old, I think he might have just turned 15, perhaps. I think we know who we're talking about there. There's a Zimbabwean in the top 20 as well. So there's a better range, I think, than there was in the one that we did 6 years ago that reflects a game that is, in spite of itself, trying to squeeze out of its traditional flesh pots, if you like. So it was good fun to put together.
It's a really
there's
good list.
Always going to be some scraps, right? There's always going to be some arguments, but that's all part of the fun. You helped, didn't you?
I did help, yeah.
Yeah.
And I really was thinking about it quite a lot. Like several weeks after you and Joe asked, I was still sending emails thinking, actually, no, I think so-and-so's too high, so-and-so's too low.
Sleepless nights thinking about Reece marry you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess, sorry, the other thing for me on this I think is interesting is like how you actually, almost the philosophy of it, because you can go for, is it the most talented players under the age of 23, or is it who's, I guess, who's going to have most impact on this national game? Because you could arguably say that even there's some Indians who, you know, you watch the IPL, like I think Ankush Raghavanshi didn't make it in, right? And you watch him in the IPL and think like that is one of the best batting talents on the planet. But also, if you end up with, you know, 8 Indian batsmen there, you can be pretty sure that at least 2 of them aren't going to have substantial international careers because there's only 6 spots going. And then also, is it like, you know, is it the best players under the age of 23 right now, or is it about how good they will be? Because the 14-year-old, okay, actually, he might be one of the best players just full stop under the age of 23 right now. But he's going to be in the next list probably. So
And the one after that.
Yeah.
Next up, Phil, you spoke to the people from DineticQ.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, who are rewriting the playbook with their state-of-the-art coaching platform and lab-based services. You can hear all about that now.
We're here to chat about DineticQ, a company that you two have both been closely involved with, and in particular, this new app that you have launched recently, the Paceflow app. Now, if I could go to you, Mark, first of all, describe what the Paceflow app is, and then I'll come to Kevin for a bit more stuff on it.
So the Paceflow app is an ability for anyone in the world to upload a couple of videos, one from the rear and one from the side, and then get all of our knowledge, everything we've learned over the last 20 years, put into an app to help everybody achieve their potential. Everyone wants to be better, and hopefully with this app, people can get to their best they can be in fast bowling.
What are the biomechanical challenges of fast bowling in particular? It's almost a mystery to many people, even those who actually do it and do it quite well. So I imagine you've taken 20 years and more of learning and tried to build it into this app. I mean, how challenging is that in itself?
Well, the danger is you've got so much information we could pull out. So what's really most important? And, we boiled it down to performance and injuries. So we want to perform better, we want to bowl faster, but we don't want to get injured. And there's often a juggling act between those two. And biomechanics is only one part of that jigsaw puzzle. So we focused in on the biomechanics, but there's a lot more to it than that. And in Shiny, we'll talk about that in due course. But from an S&C to psychology and such like. But we've started with the biomechanics, and because technique is key, and we see too many people out there with poor technique, and you could just know they could be better if they got their technique better.
The occupational hazards of fast bowling, are they less intense now because of the developments in understanding of the impact on the body? In short, is it a safer pursuit now, fast bowling, than it's been in the past?
From my perspective, I'd say we understand a lot more. So we understand the science behind fast bowling, but as Shiny alludes to, it's not just about the numbers and the biomechanics, it's everything that goes into that. Therefore, that complete picture is much better understood now. You're seeing more players having much longer careers because we understand how to look after them better. So that complete picture from a sports science perspective, being used in elite sport, is enabling, not just in cricket, but in many sports, players to have much longer careers.
Kevin, could you boil down for the layman what the base essentials are for fast bowlers, and in particular to survive the rigors of fast bowling? What are the kind of the tombstones, of bowling fast?
Probably 10 years ago, I'd have given you many, many, many tombstones. And they'd have been, within those tombstones, there'd have been loads of different aspects that would have complicated it for everyone, myself included. So if I was to look at it now and through a much more simplified lens based on experience and education and obviously challenging myself, the first thing I've got to look at is all I want to do for every bowler that I work with is to make bowling feel easier. Now, that might sound a little bit wishy-washy, but within that, I will be looking very, very closely at technical aspects. But what I don't want to do is put a load of noise into those bowlers' heads. So, my type of coaching will be a lot more around shapes, metaphor as speak, rather than heavy technical jargon, and just listening very, very carefully to the feedback that I'm getting back from the bowler. Obviously, I'll be using video. The next part is strength. Now, I know that strength underpins an awful lot of things. Bowling being a power exercise, the bit that obviously underpins power is strength. What we found, and every pace program that we used to take over to Potchefstroom in South Africa, we were finding that whenever the guys got stronger, but then did a strength session before our technical sessions, the technical sessions were completely different. They were brilliant. So you basically lit up the whole central nervous system. Bowlers found it really hard to achieve the shapes that we were looking for them to achieve. And then the next bit would be workloads. And I know it's something that's out there, but I really enjoyed the first time I heard a guy called Tim Gabbett talk about workloads, acute chronic workloads, which sounds a little bit complicated and funky. I actually thought, I get this. I get what he's trying to say. And I then tried to sort of cricketify it. And that's what I've spent a long time doing, and working out what numbers work for my fast bowlers. And for example, my fast bowlers are all different. So I've got Ollie Stone, Josh Tong, Dylan Pennington, Mo Abbas, I've had Fergus O'Neill, Brett Hutton, loads of different shapes, sizes, paces of bowlers. And what I've found out is they've all got their sweet spots for workloads. So I basically now understand those sweet spots. Do I program them accordingly? They don't have to see how I'm doing it. They just trust that one day I'll bowl them a little bit more, one day a little bit less. What I do is I bowl them quite a bit. And the more I bowl them, the better they feel. But I try and change the way I bowl them. So different frequencies, different volumes, different intensities. And those are my three pillars now that I work to. Within them, there is detail, but I make sure that I'm not putting loads of noise into my bowler's head. What pace flow is the technical pillar. There's a number of things that then feed into the algorithm that we've got for pace flow. And as Mark said, it's just 2 pieces of footage now. And then it actually gives us an amazing profile. And that profile is what I would, or used to come home pretty much every night, being the badger I am, with the footage of my players, and probably spend, a couple of hours trying to work that out myself, and then decide, right, how am I going to help these guys to go forward? Now I actually use this tool obviously all the time, where I send in the 2 pieces of footage. The next day I get back the profile of the bowlers, and I know exactly what I'm doing. So for example, when we sign a new bowler, immediately, as soon as I've got them up to full intensity, I get those 2 pieces of footage into DineticQ. It then comes back to me the next day as a profile, and I've got a really easy red, amber, green system I follow to actually put their coaching in place. Once I've done, for example, say a 6-week program with them, which will be their physical work and their technical work, I then reprofile them. So the footage goes in again. As long as the score doesn't go backwards, it's good. What we always set out to do with this piece of equipment is not to say, we know everything, you coach our way. The really important part of this is it's a tool for the coach to use. We want the coaches to coach. We hope they've got a reasonable understanding of movement patterns. Let's not say biomechanics, let's say movement patterns. So they can understand the recommendations that we make. And we make some simple recommendations, not heavy technique. It's just simple recommendations. They then, as the coach, can say, okay, this is a profile built on a lot of experience, a lot of peer-reviewed papers. And then we've got a framework to actually say, that's where they are, benchmark it. Can we get them better? You've actually got a profile that says that's where you are. Can't argue with it because it's all moments in time. I can't actually bias that report in any way, shape or form. When the footage goes in, it goes in, and I can't affect the score. And what we're then hoping is that with good coaching, we can move that forward. We check it in 6 weeks' time, and hopefully the score keeps creeping along.
So Mark Wood is closely aligned with this app, the Paceflow app, and the company itself. And I'm due to talk to him in the next couple of weeks. And he's a fascination to all of us, is Mark Wood, not just on the pitch either, but talking specifically about him as a fast bowler. I've met him a few times. He's 5'10" or 11. He's not much of him. He just looks like a normal bloke in the street. And yet he's the fastest bowler in the world. Mark, explain how Mark Wood is able to generate that kind of almost surreal pace at times.
But good question. If I knew the complete answer to that, we'd be laughing, wouldn't we? I mean, ultimately, he's able to apply a lot of force to the ball to make it accelerate really fast and bowl really fast. And where does that start? It starts in the run-up. So he's obviously got a very effective run-up that gives him energy at the crease. And then during the crease, he creates time to then apply that and transfer that energy to the ball. And, he has a lot of the attributes that we'd know are linked to pace. Yeah. But also he's got some things that are unique to him. And as Shiny said, everybody's different. So in a nutshell, he's very effective, as effective as anybody of converting that run-up speed into ball speed in a very explosive way.
Fabulous. Okay, well, listen, thanks ever so much for joining us, chaps. The Paceflow app provides comprehensive biomechanical analysis and commentary for bowlers and coaches wherever you are. And you don't need to be necessarily affiliated to a club. You can contact the app straight yourself, download it and crack on from there. And it's a fabulous thing that you're offering to any young quick bowlers out there. Best of luck with how it goes. I'm going to try and hunt down Mark Wood for a chat regarding it and the mysteries of his own brilliance. Really hope it goes well. Thanks ever so much for joining us. And just on that, hopefully, all being well, and we're putting this on the record, Mark. Mark Wood will be joining us ahead of the Oval Test match. He's an ambassador for DineticQ and not just an ambassador, but probably a fascinating guinea pig as well for their ideas as well. He's featured obviously in some of that chat as well as Woody. So hopefully he'll be on the show in a couple of weeks or a week or so's time. We have. Are we doing more of the magazine?
We're doing more of the magazine.
Sorry, we can cut that last bit then. Fine.
What else is in the magazine?
Brilliant. So I sat down with Ben Duckett after Leeds, which was a laugh. We had a good time, actually. He was obviously feeling pretty chipper. The WCM curse struck because he's not got a run since, although there's all kinds of reasons for that. So I did that one, and it was quite fun because I don't think he embodies the fault lines of Bazball because he's almost become too reliable, but he still embodies the essence, I think, of Bazball. As you've said before, Yaz, and I tend to agree with you, of all of their selections, of all of their shots in the dark, his is perhaps the most inspired of them all. And with a view to that, I spoke to Peter Moores, who was a key figure in his development and who got hold of him really in his early time at Notts, and they sat down and they made a plan for how he was going to become the player that they knew was in there somewhere. And he got a bit down on himself at Duckett, and he'd lost focus a bit. And Moores and him went about rebuilding his belief and his game. And Moores said to me, he always knew how good he was, but he didn't know how to get better. And he needed to be convinced that the way that he played naturally could still work for Test match cricket. And Moores himself as a coach says, well, he needed to envision it himself. He needed, as a coach, to almost take a bit of a leap of faith himself to think, yeah, this can work. And lo and behold, it does. So he's a good chat, and he's I think he'll have more of a role to play in England's brains trust the longer that he plays in the side as well. So there's that. There's another interview with Ravi Shastri that I also did that was on the podcast. So that's quite good fun. A sort of like a bit of a culture clash, I suppose, between me and Rav, and that was good fun to write up. Dan Gallen did a brilliant, really brilliant, actually, reflection on the South Africa win here and what that means and its far-reaching consequences. And yeah, various other things, but I've got the wrong flat plan up in front of me. There we go. 20 pages on the county files, of course, as the county championship reached its business end, rounding all of that stuff up. Joe sat down with Samit Patel to get inside the mind of Samit, one of the great survivors, if you like. John Houghton has written a thing on Barry Richards at 80, which is, as you can imagine, as lyrical and poetic as anything that John churns out. But John on his hero, that's a dreamlike piece of writing. So if you get hold of this magazine for any reason at all, then that's worth it. That's worth the admin fee. Lawrence Booth's very good on Jamie Smith, like this kind of quiet phenomenon, Jamie Smith. Dean Wilson, who co-authored David Sid Lawrence's book, which is out now, writes very movingly about the experience of putting that book together with Sid, as Sid was dying, as we know, of motor neurons. So that's a very powerful piece. Andrew Miller on aging Australians. I'm sure that'll go down well. You know, and all the other stuff.
Loads of good stuff, as always. You got really excited. So about 10 minutes into the show, the camera screwed up. So we had to have a little pause. And during that pause, Phil, you were really excited. Why were you so excited? Not just to not do the podcast for a bit. Something came up.
Yeah, well, there's any number of things. I was sent a link this morning from Jim Wallace regarding David Gower's tour bag in a kind of crushed brown leather B&H series 1984-5, I think it is. And it's currently going for 106 quid on eBay, alongside lots of other DIG pieces of merch, loads of them. And it is a cornucopia. It really is a joy to go through it. I'm just working out how much of mine and my wife's future savings account I can chip into to pick up, for example, Gower's sleeveless jumper, Leicestershire County Cricket Club, sponsored by Red Stripe. My God, they were the days. And the thing that keeps jumping out at me is his Open Championship bat, where he made 157, not out, against India at the Oval in 1990, which was my first game of Test cricket that I saw live. And that's currently going for £1,000. Now, that deserves to make its way to South East London, I fancy.
I just realised we made a real error in publicising this.
Yeah.
We've actually made quite a big error
but
here.
the bag runs out, I think, in a day, by which time the podcast won't just be out. So hopefully no one else is going to bid for it. And our designer, Joey P, can probably have that one.
My worry is that we're going to end up pushing the price up for each other. But like, who the hell is Sam Cook for England pushing up this thing? Who's Wobble Seam 69? What's going on there?
Dorse off the straight.
Some of the stuff is amazing.
You can pick up his actual Ashes coffin, 1990-91 Ashes tour, 200s, Tiger Moths, Grand Fine, him and Gucci, fisticuffs. You can pick up his actual coffin.
If you're as confused as Jazz about what a coffin is and what his Ash's coffin is,
it doesn't know, does it?
David Gower is still alive and with us. He's just cleared out the attic. But
anyway, it's a stunner, and it's not just. There's a whole world of cricket merch.
It's honestly,
you don't know you want Greg Matthews' Ashes baggy green until you go and bid £1.5 for it.
1,500 quid starting price. But there's genuinely quite a lot there that isn't hugely expensive that I think is really cool.
You can pick up his MCC jumper as well.
There's a lot of his Leicester kit that's going at a relatively affordable rate.
Inexplicably affordable.
Loads of his bats aren't like crazy expensive. Like there's a David Gower England tracksuit jacket that I reckon is only about less than double than what you just get for buying a tracksuit top these days.
The winner is the one-day jumper, the long sleeve one-day jumper that I recognise immediately. It's from the 86-7 tour of Australia when they ended up winning everything. And there's a famous photo of both them filling out his pastel blue shirt.
51 quid.
51 quid, but shh, don't mention that bit. Don't mention that.
I'm eyeing up Gower's NatWest Trophy tracksuit jacket. That's the one for me.
Yeah, the
that's quite
92
unique.
win. Remember that? Before we move on to probably something vaguely important, subscribe to Wisden Cricket Monthly for a year, folks. Price is starting at £39.99. And you are, listen to this, automatically entered into a draw to win one of 2 new DSC bats. Got a DSC Perler and a DSC Black Pro to give away to 2 subscribers. RRPs of 521 quid and £623 respectively. Subscribe using the link in the show notes to be in with a chance to win. This offer is for UK listeners only. More details, of course, on the subscriptions page. But just try and get that down. 521 quid and 623 quid, 2 bats giving away to 2 new subscribers.
Outrageous.
You are automatically entered into the draw.
Finally, Italy have qualified for the T20 World Cup in 2026. Ben, a joyous moment.
Yeah, it is. You know, and not as much of a surprise as that sounds like, because they've done some real good work in terms of recruitment. You know,
It was a shock to me.
we knew about, so they had Joe Burns last time. I think he helped them get to this, got 100 in the tournament that got them to this stage. They've got Grant Stewart, and then they've got Emilio Gay, who's Phil's distracting next to me because he's just seen David Gower's Bradman 11 shirt, which is a baseball style piece
With
of kit.
Bradman written on the front,
Yeah,
and number 3 on the back.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Toyota as well on the back. So back to Italy. Did I mention that the Menenti brothers from the BBL? So there's some sort of professional cricket pedigree in there, but that's still a really tough competition to get through. So they beat Scotland. That was the big win for them that got them there. Gay made 50 in that game, so he will be playing for them at that World Cup unless somehow things go really badly for England and he's on the Lions tour and gets a call up to the Test side before then. If that doesn't happen, he'll be there at the World Cup next year. And yeah, obviously it's a shame for Scottish cricket, I suppose, but a wonderful story for Italy, and also an amazing game between Scotland and Jersey, which pretty much helped confirm Italy's place there, where it was just the finish had everything. You had a keeper coming out at number 11, ramping his first ball, and then in the end you had Jersey winning it by 1 wicket off the very last ball of the game, and that means that Italy are at the World Cup. Marcus Campopiano.
Oh yes, please do that again.
Appealing. Marcus Campopiano appealing.
Can we do that? Is that okay? It's fine.
What do we think Italian cricket is? What's their style? Is it spinners? Is it spinners on dry pitches in Sardinia? Or is it?
Every trick in the book.
Is it getting to 115 and just parking the
I tell you what,
buses?
they're bowling 8 overs an hour at best. I tell you what, it'd be great. It'd be so watchable. It's a marvelous story. It really is.
Cricket's
genuinely.
coming Rome.
And they've very good.
It's not.
And the football team haven't qualified for the last couple of World Cups, so Italy better at cricket than football.
That is true. I think if you were born in the year 2010, you have seen Italy qualify for more cricket World Cups than football World Cups, or men's, at least in men's cricket and men's football.
We're going to have to wrap it up there. Cheers, Phil. Cheers, Ben. Cheers, listeners. Well done. It's time to reserve your place at the unmissable Kia electric experience. Be one of the first to see Kia's groundbreaking new electric vehicles, the sporty Kia EV4, an athletic hatchback with advanced electric power, and the spacious Kia EV5, an SUV with a perfect blend of versatility and performance. Secure your exclusive place today. Search the Kia electric experience.